Let's bring Stu in now. Good morning, Stu.
Good morning, fellas. Good morning.
Day one of the World Series. Did I get the story right, Dave? Is that how that went in '98? Spring training. Take a look at the rings, fellas, and let's get on board.
Did say that, but the part before that is Dan Worthen was a pitching coach before that, and Danny is a good pitching coach, and went on from there to coach the New York Mets and had a long career there. So the first thing I told him is, you already got one guy fired, and then that's when I threw the rings on the table and said, "This is what we're here for."
That's even better.
I tell you what, I wish I was there in San Diego and got a chance to play under you, Stu. And look, you looked like in that mound visit that you could have took the ball and got a few outs still.
You know, that photo right there is probably, you better keep that one, because I never wore a jersey. So having a jersey on in itself is worth keeping. But you know, Kevin Brown is a competitive guy, very, very intense out there. And, you know, it was always my deal that if there's a weapon that I could give our pitchers while they're doing the job, because, Pete, you know, when you're out there, so many things are happening and your mind is racing, and sometimes the situations cause you to speed up the game. And I always felt that my job as the pitching coach is to give these guys something that they could use in that situation that's going to help them get out of it. And so a lot of times I would go to the mound and I'd say, "Hey, look, this is what you did the last at bat against this guy. You know, I think right now is a good time to throw, you know, X, Y, Z, whether it's his slider or his fork ball or that a good hard sinking fastball, but try to give them something that they can look to get out of that situation." And I try not to make too many mound visits. We did have, in my opinion, a young staff. Kevin Brown would have probably been the veteran on the staff. We had Joy Hamilton, Andy Ashby. We had Sterling Hitchcock. And we did also have Mark Langston, who we used as a swing guy. But a lot of times I wanted to be sure that I was giving them information that they could use.
You just made a great point that I talk about, and we think of pitching coaches always as they're fixing your mechanics or they're looking at data. The best pitching coaches, when I think of Dave Righetti and I think of Darren Balsley and the list goes on, they were helping me with those in-game adjustments on what the batter was doing and what we could do next. You make a great point, and especially when I was young. Look, I want to take you back to '81, though, and ask you what that was like. I got my rear end kicked early on in the postseason. You're 24 years old, 1981, a rookie, Yankees versus Dodgers. Take us back there.
Oh, man. It started actually before that. You know, this is the story that a lot of people don't know. You know, we had a 60-plus game strike that year, which changed the format of the playoffs. And so we actually, that would have been the first wild card playoff that led into, then it used to be League Championship Series, then World Series. We ended up having a playoff before the League Championship Series. So before that series started against the Yankees, I lost 2 games against the Houston Astros in relief. And we were best. We were 1 game from elimination. I lost the first 2 games against the Montreal Expos. We were 1 game against elimination. Rick Mundy, as you know, in that Montreal series, hit a game-winning home run against Steve Rogers, which advanced us to the World Series against the Yankees. Against the Yankees, we lost the first 2 games against the Yankees. And so we came back to LA, we won 3, and went back to New York and won 1, and we ended up winning that series. So needless to say, I put us in a bad situation in those first series.
Hey, Stu, you know, you did nothing but put the A's in good situations for 3 straight years, appearing in 3 straight World Series. We've talked about your World Series MVP in '89 when you guys swept the Giants. I want to ask you this. Because I think that little section of time is the best example of the best regular season team doesn't always win the World Series. You guys were a better regular season team than the Dodgers in '88. You're a better regular season team than the Reds in '90. but neither one of those World Series went your way, and they weren't close. How, years later, have you looked back at that run of 3 straight appearances with you and the A's?
What I can tell you is different now in versus those periods of time. Starting pitching was all that was the difference in those 2 World Series for us. We ran into a hot Oral Hershiser in '88, and we ran into a hot Jose Rio in 1990. And those guys were the difference in us winning and losing, not to mention the Nasty Boys, their bullpen. But Rio had a great series. He ended up being the MVP. Hershiser had a great series in '88, ended up being the MVP. And, this will always happen. And the Mets, I think, were an example of this coming into this year. They were hot and they played well. They beat the Phillies. They didn't have enough to beat the Dodgers. And so, it depends on who gets hot. The Padres were hot, and then all of a sudden they went cold in that Dodgers series. So when a team gets hot, if you can combine, timely hitting and great pitch, you're going to be the team that's going to win. Obviously, you eliminate the errors, but hot pitching and the team that gets hot at the right time is the team that's going to win.
I think you make a good point. Let me ask you a question. We just went over Cole and Flaherty. Both of them, we've seen flashes of them being good in the postseason. We've seen both of them kind of let it get away from them. You're walking out to the bullpen with either one of them tonight. What's your last bit of advice? What's Dave Stewart's advice to both starting pitchers to hone it in and have a good night?
I've always found that in these series, especially that first game, when you're starting that first game, there's so many things that are going through your mind. And you have a tendency to put more responsibility on yourself than you need, putting that best foot forward, giving our team the opportunity to win this first game. We win this first game, then it's going to have an effect on the whole series. And the reality is that you go out in that first game and hopefully you've had a couple of days to really recognize anything and everything that could possibly go wrong in that game. And if you recognize the things that could go wrong in that game, then you're prepared when they happen in that game to eliminate those situations from blowing up. And so my only advice is go out, be aggressive, pitch as you've always pitched with confidence. Make sure you stay with your strengths, and you should fare well in this baseball game.
Boy, Stu, we love talking to you, man. We appreciate you getting up early out west. I didn't have time to ask you about the 2-2 pitch from Langer to Tino Martinez in Game 1 in '98 that Richie Garcia erroneously called somewhere not a strike. It's probably a good thing we didn't get to that. By the way, Mark Langston still doesn't like talking about that. I thought that enough time had passed where I could poke the bear a little bit. No, he gets pissed. He doesn't like that.
In that old Yankee Stadium, there was a door that led down to our dugout. I almost ripped that thing off the wall.
Stu, we appreciate you, man. Thanks for being on with us. Enjoy the World Series.
Take care, you guys. Thank you so much for having me on.